Okay. Thank you, everybody, for coming out today. We've got a lot of topics to cover. This is our third time around, so hopefully we've figured out everything that we need to say, how to say it, and get you guys all the information that you require for the upcoming broadcast coordinate webinar. We are recording this session. We did record session 1 and 2 as well. So if you want to see other questions that were asked in the other sessions, those are posted along with timestamps of the actual questions that were asked and answered live. So all of those are there. And at any time during this webinar, you do have a question, please type it in. We do have staff here that will be reviewing it as they come up, and then we'll pause at different points to answer those questions live as well, so that everybody gets the benefit of those questions being asked. So we're covering broadcast coordinate update webinar for all of SmartNet North America. My name is Tyler Collier. I am the product manager here at SmartNet North America, and will be your host today. So let's get going. So here's the update and the agenda for what we'll be discussing today. We'll give a quick correction services update, introduce support resources, because we'll reference those throughout the webinar. At certain points, I'll talk a little faster to get through some of the more general information, and then try to slow down as we get to the more germane coordinate and broadcast information as we come across it. On top of the support resources, we'll talk about kind of why we're doing this in a general from a general perspective, and also talk about a little bit about our integrity monitoring program, and then really get into the meat and potatoes of their new realization and solutions and reference frames that are on top of us right now, and the whole reason that we're undertaking this project. We'll discuss what happens if you need something different. If you want to stay on the coordinates that are available today, that you're using today, how do you stay on those for a period of time? How does this affect you specifically? Really talk about questions and try to boil down the really complex topic to, does it affect you? Short answer is yes, it affects everybody that uses SmartNet. Talk about coordinates and epic tracking, the things that are going in the background so that you can see what has been done, what is being done, and what will be done in the future. And then, of course, the important dates, wrapping up, and any additional questions or time at the end that you guys want to spend, picking our brain and asking more questions as we go. So with that, we'll get kicked off. So, correction services update. We like to do this most of the time before we start anything else, just so you have an idea of what's going on with SmartNet. Currently, we have right at 1,500 stations servicing SmartNet with 1.4 billion acres under coverage. We now have service in all 50 states and 8 Canadian provinces. This means we have coverage in 470 of the top 500 U.S. MSAs, with about 288 million folks covered in the U.S. and about 28 million folks covered in Canada. So a pretty impressive footprint. So we want to be where you need us when you need to get out and use correction services. This is the coverage as of middle of October. Hasn't been a lot of new additional stations in the last little bit, but we'll continue to update this as time goes on. A lot of our focus in the past 12 to 15 months hasn't been on necessarily footprint expansion so much as making sure we start solidifying full GNSS corrections in all the areas that are currently serviced by SmartNet. So those new areas are coming online from a GNSS perspective, on a monthly basis. And to that point, currently we have 100% of SmartNet is fully GPS and GLONASS capable. Now, this doesn't seem like a big thing since GPS and GLONASS has been around, but we were like at 99.99% for a long time because we had like literally a station or two that were still kind of floating around out there that were GPS only. But now that is completely been taken care of. Everything's on GPS and GLONASS now. So anywhere you go, you do have at least dual constellation availability. 81% of SmartNet is GNSS capable, meaning GPS, L1, L2, LC, L1, L2, LTC, and L5. All triple frequencies from the Navstar GPS constellation, as well as GLONASS, Galileo, and Beidou. This list here is the areas that are 100% GNSS capable. And we say approximately 100% there because if there's a station that's still not, you could be in an area where that one station influences the overall network correction. So you might just get GG coverage. But for the most part in these areas, we have full GNSS infrastructure deployed out there, meaning all the stations that service these areas are fully GNSS. And so when you go out, if you're using a GNSS mount point, you can expect to get full GNSS corrections. And to get those corrections, you do have to be on one of our MSM mount points. You can't be on a standard RTCM3 old school 3.1 mount point. You do have to be on one of the RTCM version 3.2 mount points. These are the three different variants that are currently available: MSM IMAX, MSM Near, and MSM VRS. Each one of these gives you the ability to get fully GNSS corrections in the solution type that you prefer. IMAX and VRS being network corrections, Nearest being a single baseline. All of these were launched in 2017. They are available today, and they work with anybody's existing login. So if you have an existing login, you have a fully GNSS capable rover, and you haven't made the transition over to one of these MSM mount points, we strongly encourage you to do that so that you get the full functionality of what we offer from SmartNet's perspective. All the other details remain the same. So the domain, the port, all those remain the same. You just have to change the mount point to one of the three mount points that you see here on the screen, and it'll take care of it for you. So that's a quick update. GNSS infrastructure, where we stand today as far as correction services go, just so that you have a kind of an idea of where we're working from and what we're doing as we go forward. There are some new stations that should be coming online here in the not too distant future. I think we've put a couple new ones in here towards the end of the year. Those will be on the network coverage map here probably sometime in the early new year. We did have a little bit of a moratorium on commissioning any new stations because of this broadcast coordinate update that's coming along, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in a second. All right, so pause for a second for station identification and questions. Anybody have any questions so far on correction services or GNSS? All right, don't see any questions being typed. Can everybody hear me okay, I hope? All right. All right, support resources. Support resources. We do a lot in the way of making sure that we have support resources available to our customers where they need them and how they need them when they need them. We do this so that you'll find the information very easily without necessarily submitting a support ticket, so you can self-support in areas when you need to, or if you do want to reach out, those course resources are available as well. We do have a variety of tools that offer support and status to make sure you get that information. First and primary is the support and portal knowledge base. You can find this at support.smartnetna.com. This is a full support portal, full knowledge base, has all the information that you might need, both on today's topic and pretty much any other topic to do with SmartNet. This covers a variety of different things, from getting started to what error messages mean to any of the webinars that we do, including this one, get posted there for you guys to be able to review and take up as you need to. So if you do have questions today about this topic and you don't know where to go to find the answers, and you really in a bind to need that answer over the holidays or something when operations are up and running, but support staff might be a little bit skinnier and take a little longer to respond, you can go here and you can type in any of the keywords that I mentioned throughout the webinar here, and it will get you the answers that you need. On top, of course, just the normal support portal and knowledge base, we also have system status. We have system status. This is outside of our infrastructure. The monitoring information that monitors the network is outside of our infrastructure, such that if things happen, monitors get pushed over to system status, and alerts can be generated, and you can find that information at status.smartnetna.com. If you do want to know the status of SmartNet, this is where you go, because this is going to tell you if things are up and down, if it's more than a localized issue, like localized being you, if it's a larger issue that is affecting a larger swath of the network, because about 99.9% of the time, sending an email in that says, "Is there anything with SmartNet I can't get on?" Is going to get an answer of, "No, everything's fine with SmartNet." We do operate at a pretty good clip. In the 99.9 plus category from a correction services perspective. But this is where you would go to be able to find that information, as well as any maintenance that's going on, any big announcements that might be happening. This is where you can go to check. If you need to find out more information at a more micro level, a little bit lower level, station status is also available, of course. This is the live status map. So you can go here to live.smartnetna.com and get station level information that talks about is that station online, offline, under repair, or those type of details. We did introduce earlier this year site advisories, site notices, so that you can actually go in when you go to the site. If there's an advisory and there's something that we know is wrong with the site, repair needs to be done, positioning issues, quality QCQA issues, anything that might be your germane to you guys knowing what's going on with the site, it's going to be posted on there so that you can see what is going on. So you don't necessarily have to send an email into support or ping support to say, "Hey, what's going on with the station?" You can go to the live status map. You can go to the site search tool and pull that information up. And then lastly, we have our Twitter account. Now, you may or may not be avoiding Twitter like the plague nowadays, but we put a lot of information on Twitter, but it also directs directly into the portal as well. So anything that we post on Twitter is going to be on the right-hand side of the portal, so that you guys can see that if you don't have a Twitter account or you don't get on Twitter. So all that information is going to be there. This is going to be just pretty much anything that's happening on SmartNet at the macro level, webinar announcements, maintenance announcements, interesting topics, new coverage areas added, but big things, but not down not down in the weeds. So large, high-level stuff is going to be posted here. Both operational, maybe a little bit of general information and marketing and other stuff like that as well. We do have a question. Can you get these support resources from my world? No. All these resources are under our portal. They are not in my world anywhere. So if you go to my world, you're going to find none of this information. You will find all this at support.smartnetna.com. That's where you're going to need to go to get that information. Okay. Let's see any other questions right now. So we'll keep on banging away. All right, so I talked pretty fast through the first part of that. I have in each one of the preceding webinars as well, simply to get us through it and get into the meat and potatoes of what we're going to be talking about today. So we've covered GNSS correction services, how you get support, but this is a pretty big issue why you need support as we move into this broadcast coordinate update. So SmartNet coordinates integrity monitoring. Why do we do what we do? How do we do what we do? What does this mean, et cetera, et cetera? So station positioning. Let me get this question. This is a good question right out the gate. Thank you, Timothy. This has nothing to do with 2022, so don't freak out about that, but we'll cover that in more detail. This is not NATRF 2022 update, but we will cover that in detail a little bit later. But it's a good question, so don't freak out about 2022. This is not what we're talking about today. So station positioning. We adopted the proposed NGS standards back a millennia ago, it seems like, when they were first published, to assure that we had an accurate tie to the National Spatial Reference System, the NSRS, as well as be able to do things that provide us the internal integrity that we require to be able to deliver quality network correction. So from a NGS requirement, if you look at this document, it requires us to have a tie horizontally 2 centimeters, vertically 4 centimeters to the NSRS. And historically, we've been able to achieve in the XYZ, not in the lat long height, but in the actual Cartesian space, in and around or less than a centimeter in those Cartesian space. And so, when we adopted this, we wanted to have a standard. We wanted to have an understood standard of coordinates that we would be working from, not just making things up as we go along, but have a thing that we could reference and say, this is why we do what we are doing. And so as we come into 2020, why we are making this broadcast coordinate update is to adopt the new NSRS realization. And so we are adhering to our standards to make sure that we are working from this as we go forward. The same thing goes in Canada. In Canada, we have actually a little bit stricter requirement because we are a participant in the NRCAN RTK compliance agreement, which means we actually signed a document telling NRCAN that we would remain in compliance with NRCAN provided broadcast coordinates. Again, this provides the accurate tie to the NSRS. It allows us to have the internal integrity required, but it does require us, by what NRCAN says, to adopt NRCAN provided broadcast coordinates within a tolerance. Up into this point, about 97% of SmartNet stations have been in compliance, but we have never fully adopted NRCAN provided broadcast coordinates. What does this mean? This means for the past like 8 years, 7 years, we have been using SmartNet derived coordinates that are in within tolerance of the CSRS version 6 solution. And so as we're updating the US coordinates, we're also taking this opportunity to update to the most current solution in Canada as well, so that we are in complete compliance. And as time goes through and time goes on, we can make sure we remain in compliance with those coordinates, and we can make sure that as we bring new stations on, there's no discontinuities between the station coordinates that are being produced back 6 or 7 years ago and today. And we'll get into that in pretty good detail as we go along. In addition to our compliance programs and our adoption of standards, we also have our own integrity monitoring program. This actually runs continually on a daily basis, where we compute 7-day averages of daily 24-hour solutions from SmartNet. And we use 7-day averages so we get any type of, get rid of any of extraneous noise, flyers, or things that could cause false alarms, etc. And this gives us a much more consistent view of the overall performance and coordinates on the network. We do have alarming thresholds and update thresholds. So from an alarming threshold, if a coordinate exceeds 2.5 centimeters, resultant threshold, and this is in the again Cartesian, and this is in a global reference frame, not in a local NSRS reference frame, we alarm and we alert and we take a look at it to see what's going on with that station. Now, because it's in a global reference frame, which we'll talk about in a second, there's always movement. There's always change in the position of the coordinates because that's always happening over time as the plates move. So we have a little bit looser tolerance on that so that we can see what's going on. We don't get alarms, but we have a good idea of what's going on. We do have update thresholds as well. This means that if a coordinate exceeds 3.5 centimeters, then we're going to update that station's coordinates, both the processing coordinates in the back end, which we'll talk about in a second, as well as the broadcast coordinates in the front end that you guys rely on, and do some other things such as evaluate the site code, evaluate the RTCMID, et cetera, to make sure that if those need to be updated because of the change in the coordinates. So these are the things that happen in the background as we go on a daily basis, so we can make sure we're delivering the best solution to you in the field. So that's kind of why we're doing what we're doing, the high level why we're doing, because we've adopted a NGS standard, we've signed an NRCAN compliance agreement. So that brings us to why we're doing it. But to really get down in the weeds of what we're doing, we need to have a little bit of terminology, a little bit of a discussion of definitions and terminology that we're going to be referencing. You've heard me say it a couple times already, but we want to talk about these definitions, make sure we're speaking the same language, because it's going to get really dense about what we're talking about. It's going to probably be a little bit confusing, and I'm going to do my best to talk about it in a way that that brings it down to how you guys can understand it and how it's really going to affect you in the field. So processing coordinates. You've heard me say processing coordinates a couple times. This is actually what we refer to as the physical coordinate of a station on the planet surface relative to a global reference frame. And this is IGS or ITRF. So this is the global alignment, and this is a close approximation of what the actual constellations are working in. The satellite constellations are actually working in. So a global reference frame that's adopted at the global level. Broadcast coordinates. This is what we use, or you guys use, as the coordinate for the computation of the differential baseline between the reference station, so the stations in SmartNet, and the rover. So this is what your differential baseline is created off of. And this, in most of our products, is going to be off a local, or and I say local, meaning the national reference system that's required for adoption. You hear me talk about velocities, and part of the reason, one of the larger reasons that we're doing this update is specifically because of velocities. But velocities is the direction and speed of a station's movement relative to a reference frame. So, for example, NAD 83, which we probably all talked about or heard about before, and we'll define that in the next slide. Stations don't have high velocities because it's a fixed plate model. So it's making the assumption that all the stations are moving relatively the same direction at the relatively the same speed because they're fixed to the North American plates. Like if I draw dots on a piece of paper, I can slide those dots, I can slide that piece of paper all around the table that my piece of paper is sitting on, but they all move at the same direction. They all move at the same speed because they're all in that one sheet of paper. That's what velocities refer to. When we talk about velocities, we're talking about velocities relative to the global reference frame. And so this is the speed at which they move through time, or through the speed at which they move through time relative to the global reference frame. Non-dynamic stations, these are the stations that have low horizontal velocities. High dynamic stations have high horizontal velocities, and this is relative to one another. So for example, Nebraska, all the stations have low velocities relative to one another in Nebraska. In California stations have high velocities relative to one another because they actually sit across two different plate boundaries. And so this makes us have to do other things to update coordinates every 6 months, so our California folks know. So this is what we're talking about with these type of stations. Reference frame is just a coordinate system that allows measurements within a frame. So this would be NAD 83, ITRF, IGS. Those are the type of reference frames that we're going to be talking about today. Epoch date, the epoch, it's the point in time which a coordinate is referenced to, not necessarily a point in time to which it is adjusted, but when it's referenced to. So like here in the US, it's NAD 83, NA 2011, epoch 2010. So this is the point in time that the coordinates referenced to is January 1st, 2010. Realization or solution. This is an identifier of when, how, what data was used in the computation of a coordinate or a coordinate set. So this gets a little bit more murky when you start talking about you got a reference frame, you got an epoch date, and you got a realization or a solution. It's a little bit more confusing now because some of the things we're going to be talking about today, the arbiter of the reference frame didn't actually put a realization tag or a solution tag to differentiate it from the old one. We're going to define that so that when we talk about it, it's not confusing. But even in Canada, it can get a little bit lost because of version 6, version 7, version 7.1, and again, We're going to talk about that again in a little bit more detail in a second. So this is a first set of definitions. Processing coordinates is just where they are on the planet. Broadcast is usually relative to a local reference frame. Velocities, non-dynamic, high dynamic. These are what we're going to be talking about today. And we'll also be talking about these. And these are actually reference frame reference frame references. These are actually tied to reference frames that we'll be talking about, as we go through. So, any questions right now on the first set of coordinates, just for clarity? It's important that we kind of have a frame that we're talking about from here, so that we have a good understanding when we're talking about different things. Okay, so we'll keep. There's some people typing in the chat box as opposed to the Q&A box. If you could please type your questions over in the Q&A box as opposed to the chat box, it'll allow us to actually track this a little bit better for reference later on to other folks as well. So if you could pop over in the Q&A box, it should be on your drop down, so you see Q&A as opposed to chat. But yeah, we can talk. I just went back for you, Benjamin. Did you have a specific question on these? And just bear in mind, we are recording this, so if you want to use this as a reference later on, this particular place, this whole video and the other two that are talking about the same topics will be here, posted on the support website. Okay, we're gonna bebop along. So the next Q&A or the next definitions are, like I said, kind of related to the reference frame that we'll be discussing in pretty good detail. So IGSO 8, this is the older global reference frame, the previous realization of the IGS global reference frame that we currently operate on as of today, December, what is it? 18th, 19th, I don't even know what day it is. 19th, yeah, lost days and coordinates. I can probably tell you the epic date better today than I can the actual, the day of the year. So IGSO 8 is what we've been working on for the past lots of years. I can't even think back how far we've been on IGSO 8 now. But we are now moving to the next iteration, which is ITRF 2014. So that is the current realization of the International Terrestrial Reference Frame. This was put out a couple of years ago by the IGS, by the overarching standards body for the global systems. But we haven't been able to adopt it here in the U.S. Because NGS had not released their ITRF solution, ITRF 2014 solution for their stations, which we rely on. So they did this in September, which means that we're doing this now. NAD 83 is the horizontal coordinate system for the U.S., Canada, and Mexico. So North American datum, 1983. So it's a fixed plate reference frame. NA 2011 is the United States Spatial Reference System. This was what NGS referred to as a datum tag previously. So it was a tag of when things were done. This was the realization of things. Unfortunately, in all of the things that they did for this new realization, they did not update that. So it makes it a little confusing. So you're not going to hear me say NA 2011 much after this slide. I'll say it a couple times, but if I do say it, it will be augmented with MYCS1 or MYCS2. So MYCS1 is the multi-year core solution version 1, which is the original NA 2011 that was released in 2012 on EPIC 2010. I know it's confusing, but that's just what it is. So 2011 is the datum tag. That's when the data was used to produce produce this realization by NGS. Was in 2011. It took them about 10, 12 months to actually process that data, get it out, and then release the coordinates in late 2012. So very confusing, I know, but you'll hear me say MYCS1 most of the time going forward. And that's the first solution that was released in 2012 by NGS that we adopted back in 2012. MYCS2 is the multi-year core solution version 2. This is the sequel. This is the one we're going to be talking about today, what we are moving to. And so this is the new realization by NGS that has been released. It was released in September. That we will be moving our broadcast coordinates to make sure that we can fit now and into the future with all things NGS. You're hearing me say CSRS a couple times. This is a Canadian Spatial Reference System. They don't have a realization tag or a datum tag. They talk about things in version numbers. So we'll talk about that. And then you've heard me say NSRS already a couple times, which is the National Spatial Reference System. Okay, so next slide. I'll answer that in a second, gentlemen. All right, so new realization in the U.S., recent developments. So NGS has released NAT83, NA2011, MYCS2, EPIC 2010. So this is the new realization that NGS released. They released this in September. So we are now moving to that so that we make sure things fit with the overarching NGS NSRS as we go forward. In addition to that, they've also released the new Geo818. If you started using the Geo818 fresh out the box, go download the new one. There was an error in the other Geo818. But if you're using SmartNet, do not use Geo818 till we get to January 6th, because the current realization and the realization we're moving to are not compatible. Shouldn't be gigantic, big monster crater everything differences, but we don't recommend using Geo818 until we launch the new realization in January 6th. And also NGS released their ITRF 2014, EPIC 2010. This is a new reference frame that we're adopting here in the US. So they released those coordinates to us in September as well. What does this mean in real short terms? Well, it was released too late for us to do anything for fall adjustment in early November. So we actually had to say, okay, what are we going to do? And this means that we're going to adopt it and take this up on January 6, 2020, where we adopt both the MYCS2 solution and the ITRF 2014 solution as well. So we'll adopt both of those things take everything offline on January 5th at 10 p.m. And transition overnight. And on January 6th, you'll be working on the new MYCS2 solutions here with SmartNet. Like I said a second ago, do not begin using Geo8 2018 until we release MYCS2 coordinates in January. If you did go out and you did download Geo8 2018 right when it was fresh out the box in September, I think as of last week, they've updated it to one that doesn't have some issues or errors in it. So I would encourage you to make sure that you're using the most current Geo8 2018 on January 6th when you go to work, and not one that was released early in the process, so that there aren't any issues with what you see out in the field. So you heard me say we're adopting two new reference frames. One, MYCS2, is the one that's going to affect you guys the most. Again, this is referred to the multi-year core solution 2. It is aligned to ITRF 2014, meaning it's aligned to the current global standard. It also moved the EPIC date from the IGS 2005 that they were working on to ITRF 2014-2010. So it moved the EPIC date up 5 years. This supersedes previous MYCS1 realization. So the realization that was released back in 2012, these new published coordinates will supersede that and overwrite those. And it's, one of the things that you see here is it improves velocity uncertainties relative to MYCS1 because you have longer time series, you have more stations, but this is also one of the things that causes the problems between making MYCS1 and MYCS2 agree, or being able to maintain MYCS1, the coordinates that we're broadcasting right now today, going forward. And we'll talk about that in a little bit more detail in a second. If you're really a crazy nerd and you just want to read more about this, this is a great website here. The link is over in a number of one of the support articles. So if you can't scribble this down real fast, this is a great website from NGS that talks about how they did what they did and why they did it, with one small caveat, which we're coming to right now. Which is a possible point of confusion. If you go and you read the data over in the NGS release on that website, you will find something that refers to NYCS2, but you will not see anything on any other data from NGS on their coordinates or their sites or anything else that refers to NYCS2. It only refers to NA 2011. So NGS did not update the datum tag. So the naming convention was not updated. And if you go back to 2012, you'll see on the bottom right-hand side, this is actually a slideshow that we sat through with NGS that referred to 2011 as their datum tag. It's the year the adjustment was completed. Okay, so why they did not update the NA 2011 to NA 2018 or NA 2019 when the adjustment was completed, I have no idea. I have asked for clarity for several times from NGS on this and have yet to get it. So I'm still waiting on this. As soon as we know, we will post a support article about it, but I do not know why they did not do this. Because from the NGS release on the website previously mentioned, NYCS2 supersedes the previous reference frame and realization was released in 2011 under the name NYCS1. That is literally directly from their release. So I do not know why they did not start referring to NAT83 NYCS2, or why they didn't say NA 2019 or 2018. I do not know why they did not do that. But for clarity, as we talk about everything that we're going to talk about today, we will refer to the new realization as this very short and very succinct name of NAT83 NA 2011 NYCS2 EPIC 2010, or most likely what I'll refer to it as just NYCS2, so that you will know what we're talking about. So one of the questions we had was, do you know why it's almost being ignored by NGS? How can they change the realization without proper designator or the ability to project past values to current values? So from a why they didn't do the designator, no, I don't know. I've asked that question. I have not got a response yet, but hopefully at some point we'll get the response. And as far as ability to project past values to current values, this has to do with velocities. The underlying velocity model that supports HTTP or Opus or any of the products generated by NGS, the underlying velocity model has been updated because of this whiz-bang thing that I said just a second ago, which was longer time series, more stations. And those are great things. Longer time series, more stations. But if you update the velocity model, that means you can't easily get from or get back to the old solution that you may need. And this is not any different in Canada, just so you know. There's no way for us to produce a NYCS1 coordinate anymore. So we can no longer produce an NYCS1 coordinate for a station that we bring online today, a station we have to check on, anything that we do. So there could be a discontinuity if we release a new station with an NYCS2 coordinate into the pond with a bunch of stations with NYCS1 coordinates. And why is this? Well, if the velocity, underlying velocities change just a smidge, and now we're talking about epics of 2010, you're talking about 10 years of time that has gone by. Even if you only make a velocity change at the millimeter level, so you go from a positive 2 millimeters to a negative 2 millimeters, and this is velocities, and I'm making it real simple here, but if you just go from a positive 2 millimeter velocity to a negative 2 millimeter velocity, because you have real velocities, you have longer time series, you have more data, all this, over 10 years, that's 4 centimeters of difference in position. That is gigantic because you're talking about the time that you're going over. So a lot of information here, but the big challenge that we have going forward is maintaining NYCS1 because we can't get back to it with any tool that is available to us. So this is a challenge that we're going to have to face, and that's one of the reasons that we'll only maintain the NYCS1 mount points and solutions, as we talk about it here in a second, for a brief period of time because we can't get back to it, which can produce discontinuities in the network. So NRCAN is releasing their NAT83 CSRS version 7.1 EPIC 2010, and their They did release their ITF 2014 Epic 2010 a while ago. We haven't adopted it because we didn't want two different physical reference frames that were operating different US and Canada, but we're now adopting ITRF 2014 Epic 2010 in Canada as well. Um, uh, We've asked Canada to provide us with 7.1, which is which will be their annual solution. Technically, that'll be released at the end of January for everybody else, but we're getting it just a smidge early so that we can coordinate a concurrent adoption both in the U.S. And Canada. And we'll be doing this adoption of version 7.1 on January 6th as well. Now, this is a newly released solution. Technically, it's not even released yet. We got it just a smidge early to coordinate with our US release. But this is a multi-year solution, so basically all the data for all the stations through GPS Week 2077. Version 6 is what most people talk about in Canada, unless you're in BC, and then you talk about version 6, version 3, and version 4. It's awesome. But improvements on version 7X over 6 solution, again, longer time series, new stations filling in previous coverage gaps, and improved velocity of field, and more accurate propagation of coordinates between epochs. So all these things, again, are improvements over the old version 6 solution. Now, the question came up this week, outside of the webinar and outside of this, but version 6 is the adopted standard for everybody in Canada. Well, technically, that's not exactly fully true. The technical adoption standard is CSRS, not with a real versioning number, because just as all the NGS tools have been updated under the covers with new velocity fields and everything else. Anything now with Canada that's being adopted or produced is also in a version 7 solution, meaning the velocity models underlying have been updated. You can't get back to a version 6 solution anymore. So like a couple of Nova Scotia sites that are operated by Nova Scotia government, a lot of them are version 6, but there are 2 or 3 that are version 7. Because they were adopted earlier this year. And since there's no way to get back to version 6 because the underlying velocity models, the underlying reference frame is updated, there's no way to get back to that. So going forward, any stations that we bring on are technically already in version 7 because we're already using the velocity field, the velocity model underlying this to produce those solutions that we broadcast out to customers. So we're going to pull forward and get to 7.1 so that anything that we do going forward, again, there's no discontinuity between stations where one is on version 6 and another is on version 7 and another version is on version 7.1. We want to stay on the most current version that we possibly can, such that we don't see issues over time or discontinuity between stations as we bring new stations along. So just as I said with NGS, NRCAN has an awesome webpage that has a bunch of different information about their NAT83 adoption and what they're doing there. So I'd encourage you, if you have questions about it, to go here and read up on it as well. It's very exciting reading. If you're having insomnia, it'll put you out to sleep unless you're a coordinate geek like us. So, question, will static RONX station info pages be updated to NYCS2 as well? First, again, guys, make sure that you're over in the Q&A section, not in the chat section, just so we can have a coordinated list of questions that we can refer back to when we're doing support later. But I don't, Michael, I don't exactly understand what you're asking here. If you're asking, will all the station info pages be updated NYCS2? Yes, all stations in SmartNet will have new published values, both for version 7.1 in Canada, NYCS2 in the US. All of the station coordinates will be updated both on the portal as well as in all the products that are being delivered. And along with that, all of the old version 6 or the old NYCS1 solutions will be shown as superseded in the portal. all the old Rhinex data in the Rhinex headers will have the old coordinates until we've changed the product coordinates, which will be on January 5th. So if you download some old Rhinex data, it will have the old MYCS1 coordinates in the header field until we move on January 5th, and then it will start producing coordinates for MYCS2 in the header field. So what does this adjustment mean to me? It's supposed to say mean to me. Sorry, it says mean to mean. It's very mean. Well, just to kind of give you an idea of what's going on, we've got an execution plan that's been completed. Preparations have been finished. Data collection was conducted. Initial processing was completed. Final processing is actually not underway anymore. Final processing for the US is done. So we have coordinates for all of the US delivered. QA and QC of new coordinates is being wrapped today, probably actually tomorrow. In the US, Canada will probably be wrapped tomorrow as well. And then publishing of the coordinates is a final step. So that's when we release them out into the wild, kick them out of the nest, as it were. But to kind of give you an idea of what this this consists of, we have literally been talking about this adjustment since September. Actually, we've been talking about this adjustment from way before that in more of a very nebulous, we know we're going to have to do this kind of thing. But in September, when NGS released the new ITRF 2014 in an MYCS2 solution, we knew that we were going to have to do this. So we started putting the plan that the rough draft of the plan that we put in place into action to make this happen. This means we're doing actually 3 adjustments in 6 months, which is crazy, nuts, insanity. We usually do 2 twice a year. So one every 2 every 6 months with the bookends, but we're now doing 3. So November, January, and then again in April, May timeframe as is standard cadence. And to give you a little peek behind the curtain, each adjustment takes about 200 man hours of time to conduct and to complete. That's not the just blind processing runs that run in the background. Each region of SmartNet takes 25 to 30 hours to actually get through the number crunching part, where it's just sitting there crunching while we're doing other stuff. But there's a lot of time, effort, and energy put into this. And this actual adjustment with the new update for broadcast coordinates, because broadcast coordinates we don't typically touch, it's probably going to be closer to 300 hours of time into this. It's consumed us the past few weeks and will continue to consume us right up until the date of it being published. So we don't do this lightly, but when we do this on January 5th, 2020 at 10 p.m., we will take the network offline and probably, we say 5 a.m., probably around 2 a.m., 3 a.m. Is typically when we'd wrap up. We'll wrap this up and have new coordinates published on January 6th, the morning of January 6th. You heard me say we do this semi-annually, so we do this twice a year. Typically, and we do this in the spring and the fall to make sure that our processing, our physical coordinates are always updated so that we get great network corrections out. But now we're also going to have to take into when realizations or solution transitions happen. And this is what we're doing and what we're talking about today. And, so our physical coordinates, our processing coordinates will be published in the 2020 epic. These don't affect you guys directly. So these aren't what you receive to calculate your differential baselines. These work in the background to make sure that one of the things that we're modeling is satellite orbital error, which is relative to the ephemeris, which is relative to the reference frame. And so the better processing, the better physical coordinates we have on the station, the better models that we can create to correct for that satellite orbital error along with ionospheric and tropospheric error. So it gives a better overall solution. Oopsie, went the wrong way, sorry. So again, these are transparent to the end user. We're transitioning to this new ITRF 2014 realization. And so as of January 6th, We will publish new processing coordinates. Again, these do not necessarily affect you, except for giving better network corrections. These will be published in Epic 2020 to correspond with January 1st, 2020. And then we will return to our standard spring and fall cadence, where we update the physical coordinates, the processing coordinates in the back end on the spring and fall cadence that we typically do. Again, when we update these in the background, it just improves the network correction, but it doesn't actually shift, move, cause any changes to your differential baselines that you're calculating off the reference stations. So, broadcast coordinates. Now, this is the thing that is very serious because these are immediately reflective to customers. So when would we typically update these? Well, in California, we adjust these semi-annually, meaning we do adjust broadcast coordinates in California twice a year. So they're accustomed to changes. They're just getting three. That they're getting, 3 for the price of 2 this year, or 3 for the price of 2 next year. It's happening on the 6th. However you want to look at it. So these are adjusted twice a year, and the reason because of the plate boundary. The plate boundary falls, in the most populous place in the U.S. Goes right between, like LA and the desert. So you can have stations that go across the plate boundary. This means if we don't update coordinates in California every twice a year, then if a station were to go down and you got a correction from a station across the plate boundary, you immediately are going to see a gigantic jump, like 3 to 5 centimeter jump if we only did it once a year. If we didn't do it like for 10 years, you'd get like a 30 to 50 centimeter jump because that Epic 2010 would be just so far out of date, it wouldn't even be funny. So we update this twice a year in California so that we maintain some consistency over that plate boundary area. In BC, Canada, Louisiana, Oregon, Washington, we evaluate these annually to determine if an Epic update is required. So in BC and Louisiana, we actually haven't had to do these. BC because it's right there adjacent to the Pacific Plate. Louisiana because of subsidence issues. Oregon and Washington, again, because of plate movement. In Oregon and Washington, we've been operating in we operated in 2012 for a while, 2018, and we were going to go ahead and jump to 2020 just so that we're on the most current there, but we'll talk about that in a second. Non-dynamic stations, we just evaluate updates on an annual basis for them. So we look at all the stations really twice a year when we do the spring and fall adjustment to see if there's any gross changes to the stations. Any unplanned updates can occur after a large seismic event. Large displacements are discovered. So a seismic event, I'll think about it a second. There was one out in California not too long ago. I'll think about the location. It was about 40 miles from one of our stations. We look at that. We see if we need to update, but we were like literally within weeks, maybe a month or so of the fall adjustment. So we didn't touch anything there, but we look at that if seismic events happen. Even a couple years ago when there was a seismic event in Virginia, we analyze things to see if there's anything shifts or movements that we need to make an unplanned update for. Or the new reason to do broadcast coordinate updates is if there's a new National Spatial Reference System realization by the governing agency, so NGS in the U.S. Or NRCAN in Canada. So most areas of the U.S. and Canada are in the common Epic current class, which we'll talk about in a bit. And so when this adjustment happens, you will be in NAD 83, NA 2011, NYCS2, Epic 2010 in the US. And in Canada, will be in NAD 83, CSRS version 7.1, Epic 2010. In high dynamic areas, California will be in NYCS2 Epic 2020. Washington and Oregon, again, will be in Epic 2020. We currently don't have any stations that we classify as, or any areas that we classify as high dynamic in Canada. But if we were to move to that, this is what we would move to. So in the new adjustment in California, published on January 6th, you guys will see NAD 83, NA 2011, NYCS 2 Epic 2020 coming out of SmartNet. A second ago, we got a question. What does this mean? How much can we expect to change? So coordinates can move as little as 5 millimeters, really can move as little as like 2 millimeters. There's like a couple stations moving just 2, but can change in excess of 5 centimeters. Now, just to kind of give you an idea, we gave a big range here when we first started doing these webinars because we'd done the initial processing run, but hadn't got final QA/QC done. Right now, as it sits today, through all the regions that have been processed in QA/QCs, that's Northeast, Southeast, North Central, South Central, Northwest, and part of Southwest. Right now, we're average change of about 1.4 centimeters or 14 millimeters in the U.S. That's overall. So that's averaging literally all of them, but that's literally on a station, on a list of stations 200 long, anywhere from 2 millimeters to like 46 millimeters. So that's in the XYZ space. So if you ask, is it moving up? Is it moving down? Is it moving left? Is it right? And I don't know. We're just talking about purely Cartesian XYZ coordinates. Where is it moving? Which stations are moving? Can you tell me kind of sort of, is it Nebraska? Nebraska's actually moving a lot. I can't tell you that because the velocity model back when it was released was really bad and it's been updated. And so now the coordinates are being updated quite a bit. But no independent area, no single area, no, concise area has more or less movement than other. It all depends on how much the velocities were known, how good the velocities were in an area back when NYCS 1 was published versus today. So this is not location or area dependent. This is quite literally station dependent. You can literally have 2 stations side by side. One's going to have a 2 millimeter change. One's going to have a couple centimeter change. Okay, and this has no way for us to predict that in leading up to it. So what we're going to do is we're going to publish a knowledge base article with all stations requiring greater than 35 millimeter change. And we may back this down to 25 millimeters just to give guys a little bit more view of that. We're still toying with exactly, but we'll put it in the support article if we take that threshold down from 35 down lower. But right now, 35 is what we're announcing. It may come down a smidge just so you have an idea. And we're just going to publish the stations that have greater than that so that you have a reference point to go to look at the new coordinates of the station. We're not going to put all the coordinates in one place. They're already in one place. It's the portal. So we've had this question a lot is, what is causing the large change on some stations and small stations on others? Well, this goes back to what I was talking about in the beginning. The changes in the velocity model in areas dramatically affect the positions of stations because as they're moved between reference frames and epics. We're talking about a 10-year move in epic. So any small, literally, 2, 3, 4 millimeter change of velocities makes a significant 2, 3, 4, 5 centimeter difference in position of the station. So this is huge. This is gigantic. This is something that cannot be ignored. And this is the reason that we have to make sure that you're aware of it. Most stations do not move that much. Okay, they don't move the 5 centimeters, but there is a possibility of them moving. So you need to be aware of that. The other reason is stations could have been brought online with a preliminary solution, a 7-day solution, instead of a 14-day solution with a precise ephemeris when it was originally commissioned. So we may have just left those coordinates in place and they be a couple centimeters, I won't say wrong, but a couple centimeters different than that original preliminary solution because we don't want to change the broadcast coordinate because it's a serious deal. So these are the reasons that some can have large changes, some can have small changes. It has to do with the underlying velocity model that we're dealing with. So why are you changing broadcast coordinates if it's going to affect us? Well, first is compliance. We want to stay in compliance with the current NSRS realization or solution. So NYCS2 in the US, version 7.1 in Canada. We want to assure consistency of station coordinates. So these new velocity models makes consistency between new and old stations impossible. So if we put a new station in today and we want to bring it online, we cannot do that. because if we brought a new station on today, we're going to use the we're going to be getting an NYCS2 solution. We're going to be getting velocities related to NYCS2. That means when we put that station online, there can be a discontinuity between that new station and that old station. So that does not work. That means we can't bring any new stations online. This is also the reason that we're only going to carry NYCS1 solutions for a short period of time, because if we carry them further along on the other MRF mount points, which we're going to talk about in just a second, then that means any new stations that get brought online cannot be part of that solution, which means you're going to start seeing less and less solutions on, less and less stations on that old solution. And the other thing is we can't maintain good internal integrity monitoring or internal consistency if we don't update. If we do update it, it gives us a greatly improved model that we can look at, and we can make sure that we're producing the best coordinates that we can possibly produce. And the last is we've not touched broadcast coordinates except for in Canada or in SEPT that fall outside of our update threshold in 7 years. So there's possible localized movement, deformation on at the building level, large subsidence over large areas. There's a lot of things that can happen over since 2012 when we launched the broadcast coordinates of these stations to today. So this gives us time to level set, get to zero, get to good broadcast coordinates again, so that as we move forward, we don't have to worry about inconsistencies between the stations themselves. So question, so major challenge for users. Design topo was performed last summer, 2019. The design is being completed now. It's a major DOT project. Construction is to begin after you guys stop broadcasting pre-visualization. How can you recommend the best practices for this? How are you going to be able to use SmartNet for design coordinates? So we'll talk about that in a second, but quite simply is we have the first question is, what if you need something different, which is what we're talking about right now, which is MRF. So from now until we decommission NYCS1, there are going to be reference frames available, mount points that are available on the old reference frames to allow you a transition period. During that transition period, you'll need to do a localization yourself, a calibration, transformation, localization, 7-point helmet, 1.1 step, however you feel best to address that on the ground for your particular project. You will need to take that up, but we'll talk about that again in a second. So MRFs, if you need something different. So that question I just answered was, what if I need something different? Well, if you need something different, we've always had the ability, well, since fall 2017, we introduced the ability to broadcast multiple reference frames or multiple coordinates for the same station. And this allows customers to fit to customer needs or compliance requirements. So up until this point, we've used this in high dynamic areas or for legal requirements. And now we're adding a realization or solution transition to the list of why you might need a multiple reference frame and MRF mount point. So in California and Washington and Oregon, we've always produced the new coordinates, so the current class of coordinates, and we've always had the last, so the last coordinates that we just moved from available, as well as common, which is EPIC 2010. In British Columbia, when we took over the network in British Columbia, there was a requirement that we have a different EPIC and reference frame available on Vancouver Island, BC mainland, and then the overall CSRS as well. So for a realization, solution, or datum transition, so we stay within the standards or compliance with governing bodies, we will have NGS moving from NYCS1 to NYCS2. We need to be able to have a mount point that has both NYCS1 and a mount point that has NYCS2 solutions, or in the future, back to Timothy's first question of, when we go to 2022, we'll need to be able to go from, the NA 2011 EPIC 2010 to the new NATRF 2022 datum. So this is why you would use a multiple reference frame mount point to be able to go between datums and realizations, or in NRCAN speak, if you're going from a CSRS version 6 solution to a CSRS version 7.1 solution, we will have mount points that have both solutions available to you, so that you have a way to transition from old solutions to new solutions as you need to without it impacting your work dramatically. In high dynamic areas in California, we've always had a common mount point. We've always had the last mount point available. So when we transition to the new EPIC 2020, we'll have NA 2011 NYCS1 EPIC 2019 750 available for customers. In Washington and Oregon, we'll have the last, so we'll have the NYCS1 EPIC 2018 coordinates available on a different mount point. So again, if you're working on one of the production mount points today, you'll be able to get back to the older mount points, or excuse me, the older coordinates, the older realizations, the older solutions on an alternate mount point, as you go forward. Those mount points are available today, by the way, just so if you want to start transitioning right now. Or in legal requirements. So in British Columbia, we're required to, on Vancouver Island, to have EPIC 1997 available. On the BC mainland, we're required to have EPIC 2002 available because of the Surveyor's General Circular Letter 463. Those are in place today. Those are not being touched by this. Those remain just as they are because that is the solution and realization, or that's the solution in EPIC that is required. So those are available with those stations. Now, if any new stations are brought back on, we can attach the EPIC to it, but we can't get back to the particular solution that these are referenced to. So it'll be CSRS EPIC 1997, EPIC 2002 in the current solution, just a different EPIC. But we're not touching those. That question was asked in both of the previous two webinars. The coordinates that are on these stations right now today on the mount points that refer to 97 and 2002, those coordinates do not get updated and touched. Only on the production mount points will coordinates be updated. So when we talk about this, we have to talk about it in the sense of the question for legal requirements, Quebec prevents should stay in that 83 CSRS 1997-2. Is this the case? No, it is not the case. We've never done 97 in Quebec because there's technically no way to get to that solution in Quebec for us. So we can take that up offline. So when we talk about multiple reference frames, we break things into coordinate classes. So current, common, last common. So current is what we're sending out currently. Common is the common solution realization and EPIC of the governing body. So in the US, it'd be NAT 83, NA 2011, NYCS2, EPIC 2010 will be the common, as well as the current for most of the US. Current in Canada will be, or excuse me, in California will be NAT 83, NA 2011, NYCS2, EPIC 2020. So the current and common can be the same, except for in areas of high dynamic motion, and then the current will be typically on a different EPIC. Last is whatever's the last thing that we're broadcasting. So in this case, it'll be the NYCS1 solutions or version 6.0. Excuse me, NYCS1 realization in the US, or version 6.0 solution in Canada. Or legal requirements, we have the common and then the alternates. So. When you see a mount point, this is what you're going to see. You're going to see a specialized mount point where you have the correction format, which is in this case MSM, so GNSS message. You're going to have correction type. So this is the type of network correction. So this could be IMAX, it could be near, it could be VRS. You're going to have the realization now. This was not something that we had before, so this is new. So you're going to have the realization, so NYCS1 in the US, and then the EPIC, so EPIC 2010 for the mount point. So you'll be able to go to the source table. You'll be able to look at this mount point and go, okay, that's NYCS, that's MSM, that's IMAX, that's NYCS1, so that's US, and that's on the EPIC 2010. So it's right there in the mount point of what you are getting to be able to use it. The same thing in Canada. So you'll see MSM, you'll see IMAX, and you'll see CSRS version 6. And there are no alternate EPICs currently being produced in Canada, aside from the BC. So we've not delineated the epoch there because it'll all be 2010. Oh man, I thought I fixed that. So I'm not going to spend a ton of time on these slides because all this at the very end is going to be spelled out very clearly of where you can find how to get back to this very easily. But in general, SmartNet US, you're going to have current, which will be on port 10,000. So the important thing here is if you're using SmartNet today and you're using one of the standard production mount points, RTCM3 underscore near, MSM underscore IMAX, if you're using any of those standard mount points, those mount points will have the new coordinates, the new broadcast coordinates going out on them. So if you're using one of those two mount points right now today, on January 6th, you will go from an MYCS 1 solution to an MYCS 2 solution. So we will pull you along if you do not make changes to your mount points. So port 10,000, it'll be on reference frame NAT 83 NA 2011, realization, MYCS 2, epoch 2010. If you want to stay on the coordinates that you are on today, right now, as they stand, we have mount points that are available that will allow you to stay on the current realization or the current solution. And that is RTCM3, XXX, which is the correction type. So IMAX, near, BRS, max, MYCS1, epoch 2010, that is on port 1111. And you can see on the reference frame, NAT 83, NA 2011, MYCS1, epoch 2010. Now, we're dragging everybody along. And the reason we're dragging everybody along is because if we just left the solution in realization alone and we didn't update the production mount points, then when we decided we needed to turn them off because we can no longer make MYCS1 and MYCS2 stations intermix, then everybody, every single license, every rover, everybody has to update and everybody has to change. And that means basically everybody doesn't work one day. We do not want that because that means you cannot work because we've made a change and we've cut something off and you're not happy about it. So we are updating the production mount points, the standard mount points, or updating the realization that's going out on those in the US to current, to MYCS2. And if you think you need to be having an MYCS1 solution, you have to make the choice to change mount points back to the older solution. Now, it's important to understand that MYCS1 mount points will be deprecated on the release of the spring 2020 adjustment. This is not because we want to. Honestly, we wish we could just leave them up in perpetuity, but we can't because we can't get back to an MYCS1 solution. So any stations that get brought online, any other integrity, any other problems, anything that we do going forward, there is no way for us to put an MYCS1 solution on any stations going forward. So if we have to find something that has a problem or whatever, that means you'll just see stations falling out of that solution, and you're going to have a hard time understanding why this station is no longer in the solution. That I'm getting a station that's 70 kilometers away. Why am I not getting one close? Because the one close was moved, and now it only has an MYCS2 solution on it. So we have to be able to do this. We have to be able to move forward, but we're given a transition path. So from December 6th is when the new mount points went up. So a month ahead of the rollout so that you had time to transition. And then in April or May, typically 1st of May is when we would typically publish the spring solution or the spring adjustment. We will take the MYCS1 and the version 6.0 mount points offline. So you will need to make sure that you have taken steps to accommodate for that. Same thing in Canada. All production standard mount points will be moved to solution version 7.1 on January 5th. The CSRS V60 solution will be available on MRF mount points. They're already there on starting December 6th through the spring adjustment. So make sure that if you need to go back to the old solution, what is today the current solution, but if you need to stay on the version 6 solution in Canada, you change mount points to the CSRS V6.0 60 mount points. In high dynamic areas, it gets a little bit more complex because we've got the current, we've got the common, we got the last, we got the last common, we got all sorts of stuff. But this table should kind of spell it out. Again, we're dragging everybody along. So all current mount points, all production standard mount points will be moved to the new realization and Epic. Common will be moved to the new realization and the 2010 Epic, because that's the common Epic at the NSRS level. Last will be NYCS 1 2019 750, because that's what's going out right now from the fall adjustment. And then last common, we will maintain NYCS 1 Epic 2010 solutions on stations for until the spring as well. Same thing in Washington and Oregon. You know, NYCS 1 2018 Epic will be available on last mount point. Last common, NYCS 1 2010 will be available on that mount point as well. In BC, again, common will be updated to version 7, but we'll still have 97 and 2002 available to you guys in BC. So the last CSRS version 6 solution 6.0 Epic 2010 will be available. Should you need to stay on the version 6 solution for a period of time, but then we'll also have the 1997 and the 2002 solution in British Columbia, and those coordinates of those stations will not be touched. They will not be changed. They will not be updated. Whatever they are today is what they will be going forward. Again, any new stations that get brought online really can't get back to that 97 or 2002 solution, but we're pretty dense in Lower Mainland right now. So. And then finally, for users that are on certain types of licenses, this is typically IoT customers, automotive customers, drone customers, folks that are working in one of the global reference frames as opposed to one of the national reference frames. We will be updating to ITRF 14 from IGS 08. So those will be announced. You do need to make a change to your mount point between now and the spring, as the IGS mount points will be deprecated in the spring. So you will need to make that transition to the ITRF 14 mount points. There's we'll be discussing that with you. That each of you have a smaller subset currently using these mount points, but we'll be discussing that with you as we go forward. Now, you might say, Tyler, that was a lot of information, a whole hell of a lot of information. So how do I know what I'm getting? Well, connection configuration guide page has already been updated with all of this information, so you can get everything that I just said in one clear and concise place. If you go to connection configuration guide, you pick your rover manufacturer, your model, your correction area, you will see the recommended mount points for you. You will see the reference frame. You will see the Epic, and then you will see more. Right now you see less, but you would see more, and you click on this, and you click on see more, and then it's going to show you the MRF mount points that are available, the name of the mount point, the reference frame it's in, along with the realization and solution, and it will show you the Epic that it is in. So you don't have to remember all that information of what's the underscore mean, what's this mean, what's that mean. If you go to connection and configuration guide right now today, all of that information is there so that you will have the choice to choose what you want to do and what you want to update should you need to. So I'll pause here for a second, answer a couple of questions. The question was, how long will last be available? Just as I said a couple times, the NYCS 1 solutions in the US, the version 6 solutions in Canada will be available until spring. Spring 2020. So typically early May, historically, is when we have made the updates and done the spring adjustment. So that's what you'd be looking for. I'm using the IGS MSM IMAX IGS mount point. Will this change? Like I said a second ago, you will need to transition to the MSM IMAX ITRF 14 mount point. We will, drop a support ticket in, Billy, and we can address that directly with you. How long will only NYCS mount points be available? Again, spring, so May. How do you change mount points or check that you are on RTCM3? Brian, you would contact your local rover support for your particular vendor or your rover that you're using. They would be able to help you change mount points if you need that help. We may have a quick guide that walks you through that process on the portal. So you can go to connection configuration page. And if we have a quick guide or a video or something, it will be posted here, as well as the different names of the different mount points. Again, for folks that going, why are you making us change? Why can't we just stay on NYCS 1 forever? Why can't we stay on version 6 forever? Why can't those mount points just be there forever? Again, it goes to our ability to maintain the network long term, because we cannot get back to those solutions. We cannot get back to a version 6 solution. We cannot get back to an NYCS 1 solution. So we have to move to the new solutions. The tools are not available for us to do this from the governing agencies to get to those solutions any longer. So we can only maintain them for a finite time. Otherwise, there'll be discontinuities of stations if we bring stations on. Some are in NYCS 1, some are in NYCS 2, some are in 6, some are in 7.1. There'll be radical difference in the positions of the stations possibly. And that means if one station drops out and get the other station, you immediately see a jump in your position. We don't want that. We need to maintain continuity across all stations. This also means if a station goes offline, then and we have to take it down, we have to move it, we have to do something. We find a roofer moved the station and we've had to reestablish the station. We cannot reestablish those old coordinates on those old realizations, the old solutions. That means that station's no longer available in the solution if you're using one of the old solutions. This means stations will start dropping off as time goes on. And again, this will impact you going forward. It's a lot easier to take care of this in one fell swoop than try to kind of chip away at it over time. So the question is, where and when will I be able to find document listing individual station broadcast coordinate changes? It's like you read our mind. So it's a good segue. So coordinate and epic tracking. How do I find out what's going on, what we're in, what will I be able to find, and when will I be able to find it? So what you'll be able to find on the portal. In the portal, you'll find the new ITRF 2014 current epic for all the stations. You'll find the NYCS2 epic 2010 solution for all the stations. You'll find the NYCS1 epic whatever 2010, 2018, 2019 750 for all the stations. You'll find all superseded coordinates for all the stations. So if you have a set of stations that you use, you'll be able to go back and you'll be able to find what the current solution is. You'll be able to find what's last. You'll be able to find the supersede. You'll be able to find everything that you need to in the portal just by going to the site search tool and looking at superseded coordinates. So you'll be able to find that all there. Again, additionally, on the support portal, we will be publishing coordinates, stations, which coordinates change greater than 35 millimeters. So we'll call those specific stations out if they're going to change more than 35 millimeters so that you can see them, so that you can go, oh, I use that station a lot. I need to go look at this and take a look. These will be available. We're making some underlying database structural changes to try to better manage this and have this more well detailed because NGS didn't change their epic or their datum tag. So we're having to make some underlying changes to the portal to try to accommodate some of this. But that is being wrapped up as we speak. So that those will all be available in the very near future. If you're worried about it, again, you can stay on the NYCS 1 or the version 6 solution, until spring. So you'll have some time to start analyzing which stations, what stations, et cetera. In the Canada, again, same thing holds true. You'll see the CSRS version 7 solutions. You'll see the version 6 superseded solutions. And you'll also see the 1997 and 2002 solutions in in the portal. So all of that will be all that information will be in the portal, and all stations that are moving more than 35 millimeters will be listed individually in a support article, so that you can then go and reference those stations against the portal to see exactly how much they change. If there's a certain subset of stations that you use a lot, you'll be able to go find that information and see it. When on the 6th is when we will publish the new coordinates, and that's when they will show up on the portal, so that there's no confusion. So all that will be published on the portal. So you'll be able to go to, let me back up. You'll be able to go to the portal, and you'll be able to go to, oops, oh man, it's not letting me pull it up. Sorry. There's a button that says superseded coordinate class. It'll say superseded coordinates there, and it'll pull up. It'll show you superseded in the current and the beginning date of use. All that'll be will be there. So on the horizon, a couple things that are on the horizon we want to alert you to, and we have some additional information we're going to cover in just a second. So super control program, just so you guys don't think we just talk about coordinates. We actually really care about coordinates. We've made a considerable investment in developing a super control program. This is very similar to the NGS foundational course program that you might have heard about. So this is a extremely high accuracy, even higher accuracy subset of SmartNet stations that will be used as underlying control. This means all of our super control all our super control sites will have been or will be accepted by NGS into the course program. And the reason we're doing this is so that we can better maintain the overall integrity of the network, specifically as we go into these type of events where fresh out the box, I can tell you very candidly that we've found issues with some of the new coordinates that have been produced by NGS because of antenna changes that didn't get caught during the adjustment, all these different things that they've run into. So we've actually found some issues and errors while we do our fiducial checks in certain areas with some of the NGS provided coordinates that we've alerted them to, and they've said, okay, we got to look at that. You're right, that's wrong. Or that's not correct. I won't say it's wrong, but it's not correct. So we're doing this to improve our daily solution availability. In the time that NGS FTP servers get shut down because of government shutdowns, we can still have data to pull for integrity monitoring for daily solutions. It gives us, improves the solution availability for commissioning new stations. We don't have to worry about this station being down, that station being down, that we're pulling from NGS. They will be our stations. It improves consistency from adjustment to adjustment because as we go from adjustment to adjustment, we have to choose different stations sometimes, and this can cause processing inconsistencies. It can cause additional delays or additional work. So instead of relying just on random NGS stations that are out there, the NGS stations that we'll be relying on will be our own stations. So we actually have been working on this for a while now, but we're getting a lot closer. There's a lot more green dots than there were blue dots. So we're working on this, and actually, I think 2 or 3 of these blue dots are now green. They have been brought online here in the last couple of weeks. So this is our super control network. These are our stations. These are all NGS accepted stations. And so this is what we'll use as the control for future adjustments going forward. Taking us back to the very first question that was asked by Timothy, new reference frames. Today we were talking about MYCS2, so the adoption of the new realization of the existing reference frame. In the very near future, say near, air quotes, in 2022, probably 2023, 2024 maybe, NGS will adopt a new geocentric plate-fixed reference frame called NATRF 2022. So this is the North American Terrestrial Reference Frame of 2022. Because it's geocentric as opposed to the original 00 origin point of NAT83, you will see a difference of 2.2 meters relative compared to the current NAT83 reference frame. So that's a big deal. 2.2 meters is a big deal. It's actually probably better it's 2 meters than it is 2 centimeters, because 2 meters kind of jumps out at you. 2 centimeters can kind of hide from you and mess you up in other ways. But this is a big deal that's coming. They'll adopt a new geoid model, geoid 2022, along with a geopotential heights. Heights might be a bigger deal to a lot of people than the horizontal shifts, but this is all coming. It's 2022. It's not what we're talking about today. It's not what we're talking about today. We're not moving 2.2 meters. We're just moving a couple centimeters here and there, somewhere between 5 millimeters and 5 centimeters. But this is on the horizon. 2022, 2023, probably maybe as late as 2024. We will see. What does this mean to you? It means hold on to your hat, because that's a big shift and a big difference. And if you want to know more about it, there's a fancy dancy website by NGS talking about their new datums, and it's actually pretty good reading. So wrapping up, how do you find out about status of SmartNet? I talked about this first. You got the status page, status.smartnetna.com. You got live status map, live.smartnetna.com, and you got Twitter, should you want to. And again, anything we tweet also gets posted on the right-hand column of the portal as well. How do I find out more about this adjustment? I want to know more, Tyler. We've talked for an hour and 31 minutes, but I want to know more. Well, we will continue to publish new information and content in the coming weeks on the adjustment as we lead up to it. So please visit the support website to view all the available content. If you type NYCS2, you type in version 7.1, you type in January 6th, you type in pretty much anything in the search field on support that relates to what I have talked about today, you're going to find a plethora of support articles. You're going to find links to the NGS and NRCAN content that I've mentioned. You're going to find a list of stations. Those will get published, like I said, probably next week, that have greater than 35 millimeters. You're going to find links to all the multiple reference frame information that I talked about today. You're going to find links to the recording of each one of these webinars. Content's roughly the same in each one of them. I talked about pretty much the same stuff, but you'll also find all the Q&As that we've done. There's timestamp links, Q&A, so you can jump right to that section of the webinar, so that you don't have to listen to me unless you really want to the entire way through for all 3 webinars. So the timestamps will be put in there so that you can jump right to that if you want to listen to it. And the question that was asked is actually in the support article, so you can actually read the question and go, oh, I want to know more about that. Click on it and it'll take you to that timestamp. So all of that is on the support portal, support.smartnetna.com. Type in NYCS1, type in adjustment, type in winter, type in pretty much any of that kind of stuff, and it's going to pop. GNSS corrections, does it affect you? Well, if do these mount points affect you? Yes. If you want to use GNSS corrections, using a GNSS mount point does affect you. You do have to update to get to it. If you don't care about GNSS and you only care about GG, then no, you can stay on your existing mount points that you're using right now today. But we would encourage you to go ahead and take that jump and move to one of the GNSS mount points. So, the important questions. Adjustment effects. Does it affect me? Will this broadcast coordinate adjustment affect the stations I use? It's not a simple answer. It may or it may not, but you should assume yes. Like I said, coordinates may change as little as a couple millimeters all the way up to 5 centimeters. Right now, it looks like running average is about 1.4 centimeters through all the QA and QC that's been done, which is a vast majority of the U.S. So far. Canada, like I said, should be done wrapped up tomorrow. I'm not sure what the delta there is yet, or the average delta is, but 1.4 is still relatively. You will see it, especially if it's a station that's in the 25 millimeter, 35 millimeter world. Again, this is not location or area dependent. This is station dependent. So you do have to pay attention at the station level. I can't just say Nebraska's moving a lot, or Texas is moving a lot, or Colorado's moving a lot, or Virginia's moving a lot, or Georgia's moving a lot. It's really down to the station level. This station may be moving a lot. That station may not. Okay, so please look at it. Well, I can tell you that Nebraska does move a little bit more than anywhere else right now, generally speaking. But that's the only place that's kind of consistent. We will publish a knowledge base article with stations requiring changes of greater than 35 millimeters so that you'll be able to look at that. Again, we are toying with bringing that down just a smidge, but it will say it in big bold letters at the top. These stations are moving more than X. So that you can look at it, find it, go to the portal and on January 6th and see how much it did move. It is incumbent on you, the user, to adhere to good surveying practices to assure changes do not cause unintended consequences. We cannot control the consequences on the ground. We can only prepare you to understand what the consequences could be. We are offering the ability to use an MRF mount point. This allows you to get to the last coordinate class, the NYCS1 realization, or the version 6.0 solution. You can get back to that for a period of time, and that period of time is from right now, literally, we're actually December 6th is when the MRF mount points went live. So on December 6th, those coordinates or those mount points became available through the first to middle of May. So in that time intervening period, if you need NYCS1 or version 6 solutions, you have those available to you. So you can go to those mount points, you can use those solutions, those realizations up until the spring. Will MRF additions affect the mount point I use? Maybe. If you want to continue to utilize NYCS1 in the US, then yes, you got to change mount points. If you want to continue to utilize the version 6 solution in Canada, then yes, you got to change mount points. If you want to use, immediately use the latest realization and solution, and you'll take care of any accommodations you need to on the rover to accommodate the changes. You'll do your own localization, your own calibration, your own transformation, then no, you can continue to use the mount points that you're on today, and you'll hop forward to the new solution, to the new realization, and you can handle the localization, the calibration, or transformation on your own. Again, MRF mount points, they are available as of December 6th, but they will be deprecated during the spring adjustment for both NYCS1 and version 6. So that's, again, around May. So in the intervening time, you do need to perform your own localization calibration using the new realization or solution to on-the-ground control, should you need to be able to carry NYCS1 or version 6 solutions further ahead than May. Again, this is something that we have to do. That we have to deprecate these MRF mount points, with these old solutions on them in the spring, because if we don't, there will be discontinuities going forward, and random discontinuities are much, much, much more difficult for you to understand or troubleshoot than if we inform you of what is going to happen so that you understand what needs to be done on your side. So the question that we were just asked, basically you're saying you are going to have to localize and relocalize again and again every time SmartNet hits updates. No, not again and again. We have literally not updated broadcast coordinates since 2012. So in the intervening 8 years, we have not updated broadcast coordinates on anything if we didn't change other things on it, such as RTCM IDs, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, or we needed to. The only place that gets consistent updates is California, but there is no way for us to maintain the same realization solution in perpetuity because those tools are not available for us to do that from the governing agencies, NRCAN or in NGS. So unfortunately, yes, if we update our solution, update our coordinates, then you will have to take care of, we'll maintain MRF mount points for a period of time, but you will have to update at some point if we were to do this again. And again, the only reason we'll do this again is in 2022, 2023, then we'll, the NITRF adoption. Maybe I misunderstood. What about spring and fall? Spring and fall adjustment only affects California. So in California, in the spring and the fall, we update broadcast coordinates because of the plate tectonics. So because stations fall across plate boundaries there, if we do not update in the spring and the fall in California, then if one of the stations that you're getting corrections from across the plate boundary were to drop out and you jump across to a station that's on your plate boundary or vice versa, then you see an immediately jump of, 3 to 5 centimeters, like literally in the snap of a finger. So that is no bueno. you think updating coordinates every 7 years is bad. Updating coordinates in 7 seconds is really bad. No, spring and fall adjustment only affects California as far as broadcast coordinates go, or areas of high dynamic motion. But we alert people if we're going to have to update a broadcast coordinate. That's the reason we're doing this big ass webinar, gentlemen and ladies, is because we're updating broadcast coordinates, and it is a serious thing that we take very seriously, and we only do when absolutely necessary, because it causes everybody additional work, including us, both from a calculation support and from you an operation perspective. So we only do it when it's absolutely necessary. So we take it really seriously, and we do apologize for the inconvenience it may cause. But like I said at the very outset, we adopted standards so that you guys understood what was going on, what we're doing, so you can trust us long term. And that's the reason we're doing it, is because NGS and NRCAN say we have new realizations, we have new solutions. If we determine differences on those reference stations that we use in the time that the older mount points are available, will they be consistent until the next time the coordinates are updated? Would we be just able to translate our coordinate file that are referenced older coordinates? So yes. Today, right now, if you're working in Georgia, okay, and you were to get on to RTCM3 _ IMAX, and you were to get a correction, you're getting NAT83, NA2011, MYCS1, EPIC 2010 today, okay? And you're connected to the station at Georgia Tech. That solution for that station, that coordinate, broadcast an RTCM3 _ IMAX, will be available until January 6th. On January 6th, we will update the coordinates associated with that mount point to the new MYCS2 solution. If you want to stay on the solution that you're getting right now today, you change to the MYCS1 mount points, and you can maintain that coordinate on that station up until the spring. And in the spring, we will cut that mount point off, like literally it will be turned off, and we will make a lot of announcements about this. It will be turned off, and on whatever day, spring, May, whatever, when we cut that mount point off, you will not have data on that coordinate, on that realization, on that solution anymore, and then you will move to the production mount points. In the intervening time between now and when those mount points get shut down, all you have to do is go out, make another measurement on your job. If you've got a localization, if you've got a calibration, if you've got a transformation, you just got to redo it. Go out there and shoot it. There's a lot of ways that you can do this. This is really for you to determine what the best way for you is to do this relocalization, this calibration localization. If you want to do a simple shift, you can do that. If you want to do a rotation scale, you can do this. Helmer, 3D, classical, whatever. However you do a localization is up to you. If you need assistance with that, I would encourage you to contact your local hardware manufacturer support that sold you your gear, and they should be able to walk you through how to do a localization, transformation, calibration. But you have from now until spring to get that done, because the old coordinates are going to be available on those multiple reference frames up until that point. So hopefully that answers that question. So we always end webinars with this, talking about our commitment, explaining why we do what we do. And one of the things that we always say, provide a stable and reliable infrastructure on a standard reference frame. We always call this out so that when times like this happen, we say, hey, we always want to be on that standard reference frame. And in this case, that is MYCS, NAT83, NA2011, MYCS2, EPIC 2010 going forward in the US, and NAT83 CSRS version 7.1 in Canada. Those are standard reference frames. We know what they are. They're well documented. They're, the agencies that maintain these and provide these are what we've adopted, and this is why we do what we do. And so when we make decisions, we look at this commitment, and one of those things is right here on it, that standard reference frame. This is why we're doing what we're doing today. While we're talking about this, it's why we're doing it on January 5th. We take things offline, and on January 6th, new coordinates start going out. This is why we do it. So we want to make sure that you guys understand it's not just flying the sky. It's not just flying by night. We've considered this strongly, and we understand it's going to have effects. But please know we're doing it for the good of the network, and we're doing it overall for the good of all you guys. So I'll hang out and answer any questions you guys might have. With that, I'm done. I've answered everything that I can answer that you guys might have. But if you want to ask some more questions, I'm happy to stay on as long as you can. Again, thank you very, very much for attending today. If you do want to watch this again, you have some other additional questions, you want to kind of get it again, it'll be posted in the support portal here in the coming days. If you don't have additional questions, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, safe holidays to all you and your families. We'll be working getting this stuff ready. And can GeoID 12B be used with MYCS2? Technically, probably, yes. Would probably move to GeoID 2018 with the new realization to make sure it's consistent. Like I said, I don't think things will blow up if you use something wrong, but you should use the prescribed GeoID with the prescribed realization, which in this case will be GeoID 2018. And if you don't know how to get that, again, reach out to your local hardware or software vendor. They should be able to get you an updated GeoID that will work with your software, your data collector, or your rover. Okay, we will hang out here for a second. I do want to go back to this one. We answered this, I think, pretty good, but I want to answer it directly. If when we change and we stop broadcasting previous realization, what's the recommended best practices for this? How am I going to be able to use design coordinates with SmartNet? Again, the best practices is to relocalize, do a new calibration, do a new transformation between now and the time that we deprecate the MYCS2 solutions on the other mount points. That is the best way to do it going forward to make sure that you can constrain to the control that's on the project, since we will not have that solution as we take the jump ahead. Okay. All right, gents. Well, thank you very much again for your time. If you do have any questions, you can drop them in support@smartnetna.com. You can go to the support website. And with that, again, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. If you haven't got your Christmas shopping done, go get it done. Get mama something nice. All right. Thanks, everybody.